hiding at this point.
We have the last time brother. And then we need to print a new one.
Yeah. He went looking for it.
We can email me.
Oh, okay.
If I remember, I'll do it in the morning.
Good evening. I'd like to call this March 9th, 2020 meeting of the Manassas Park Planning Commission to order. The time is 7 p.m. My name is Lester Finkel. Sitting this evening are Martha Collier, John Evans, Alana Mensing, and Michael Beckett's. I will do the moment of silence and Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody stand, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next agenda item is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes for the agenda this evening? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Next agenda item is adoption of minutes. Since we haven't had a chance to talk with
I have a correction,
we have a few of them there. Would you like to,
addition.
Commissioner
On
Collier?
Page 3, mid-page on the motion and the second, there were no names.
Very good. Okay.
My notes indicated was Commissioner Evans made the motion and Commissioner Beckett second.
Very good. And then on the front page there, Commissioners Mensing and Collier were both present in the room instead of virtual, so those need to be crossed off. And then I just noticed at the bottom under that page, under adoption of minutes, it says that Commissioner Beckett's move to approve the minutes would actually be adopt the minutes. So those are the changes I've seen. Anyone else? Seeing none, would anyone care to make a motion to adopt the February 10th, 2022 meeting minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Are there any members of the public present who would like to speak about a general topic? Seeing none, we'll move along. Under new business this evening, we have a public meeting regarding site plan SP number 20-10D, Village of Manassas Park, Phase 2 residential, inclusive of associated subdivision plat. Administrator Barry, or who will we speak to this evening?
Good evening. My name is Chelsea Rowe. I'm with
Chelsea,
Norton
good evening.
Scott, the
Thank you.
developer, and thank you to the ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Commission for having me back. I was doing my notes for tonight, and I realized it was just about a year ago that I was standing up here for Phase 1A.
Okay.
So I think you can see from outside, we've come a
Yes.
long way since then. So
Welcome
that's
back,
pretty
and
exciting.
very well done.
Let me see if I can drive this correctly. Oh, yeah, here.
And for the record, I'll just open the public meeting. It's 7:02.
Okay, so I'm going to try and roll through this since my, nope, sorry. Oh, there we go. Okay, hopefully this plan is fairly familiar to you. But tonight I'm here to talk about what we are calling Phase 2 of the Village at Manassas Park overall development plan. This is basically the second phase of the plan, residential portion. So we have already gone through Phase 1A commercial and 1A residential, which is under construction right now. At Encompass City Hall, the retail building C, 164 residential units that are starting to go under construction as well, and the public infrastructure for both Phase 1 and Parks, what is becoming Park Central Plaza. And the street there. So Phase 2 is at the top of the site. It's the residential phase for the second portion, and it includes 136 2/2 residential units. The portion kind of right in the middle of the site is Phase 1B, and we'll be bringing that to the Planning Commission in a couple of months as soon as we have some feedback from future tenants, and that will encompass the last portion of this entire site. So here you can kind of see the phasing plan. The green portion is what we're talking about tonight. So again, that is 136 2/2 residential units, parking. There's a pocket park within this section, and just in general the infrastructure for this plan. Currently, this site is 3 land parcels, 2 of which are owned by Norton Scott, and 1 of which is owned by the city, and encompasses probably this portion of the city hall where we're standing tonight. So we are looking to do the subdivision plan for this in a couple of months, when we are also coming forward with the Phase 1B subdivision plan, so we can sort of efficiently do it all at once. But for awareness, there are 4 buildings, one at 9106 Manassas Drive that we own, which is serving as the construction office right now. And there are 3 smaller buildings at 9108 Manassas Drive, which are commercial tenants, which are vacating. 2 of them will be leaving by April 1st, and 1 will be leaving by May 1st. So we're working with them to make sure that they have new homes and that their site is ready for demolition as we move into the second phase, and hopefully starting as soon as this building comes down in July. So we'll be beginning that process there. So that subdivision will take place later, and Mickey will talk a little bit more about that. And then I just wanted to kind of remind everybody of what we're looking at from a visual standpoint. So these are some elevations that were provided by Stanley Martin. I think they've changed a little bit. They tweak things as they go along according to the market. I think one nice evolution we've seen in the plans is not on this picture, but on the back side. They have internal terraces, so they're covered terraces. They're a little bit, I think, better looking from the long view and from a planning perspective than having a bunch of decks out on the back. And then there will be more Juliet balconies on different levels. So I think it'll be, it's actually a nice enhancement that they're doing. And then you can kind of see in the smaller image here what the plan view of the parking garage looks like. Just, you know this as well as I, but because we only count half a space toward the parking, there's also plentiful parking across the site, and we did not ask for a parking reduction for the overall plan. And then I'll just conclude with my portion with just an elevation going down Manassas Drive, so you have a feel for what this will look like if you're standing on Manassas Drive at Park 170, facing this portion of the site. What you would see if you were looking at this image here, so you'll have residential along Manassas Drive, and then to the right of this, you would see the beginning of the commercial development. So we're excited to put this plan forward. It's been a long time coming, and it's an evolution of what we've been doing here. We've had a great experience. Your staff has been wonderful to work with, and I hope that you will approve this tonight.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, let me just continue from a staff perspective. Again, for the record, I am Michelle Berry, the Planning and Zoning Administrator for the City of Manassas. I'll try not to be redundant, but certainly some of our information will overlap from Chelsea's presentation she gave just a minute ago. I tried to visualize this using an aerial photograph so you can see what Chelsea was talking about of where this portion of the site plan will be. Again, it's the northern part of the village at Manassas Park, and you can see it is encompassing these 2 developed properties along with a portion of this City Hall property. And it does kind of join into Park Center Court, but this is like the boundaries of this portion of the development and the subject site plan. And if you'll recall, this was a subject to rezoning 20-06, which was the whole area in blue, and there were many proffers associated with that, and as Chelsea mentioned, it includes commercial The first phase of the residential is back here. The commercial development, including the new city hall, is in this area. Approximately where this building is will be a VRE structured parking garage. That site plan is currently under review. We just received the submission, I guess, late December, so it's only gone through a first review, but I believe they will be submitting comments to us as the next submission. And Chelsea talked about Phase 1B, that will be in this area, and that's where the proposed theater will be going along with some other office. Just as a note, this area here, which is currently being developed, was rezoned under a different rezoning, 20-11, rezoning 20-11. And just real quickly, here's our zoning map, and I've highlighted the different site plans along with the sister ones that you approved last year, 20A and 20B. You'll notice that a portion of 20B is the stream, if you will, that runs just to the north of this property. They're putting in piping to address that drainage area, and that's why that was incorporated as part of the commercial site plan. And there's a bit of overlap because it will be developing on top of that for this phase. It's not a really good picture, I won't stay on this long, but this is essentially the layout of most of the 136 2/2 units. You'll notice that several do front on Manassas Drive. And then here's the Pocket Park, and they will be providing on-street parking. What was proffered was this road, which will be a private road known as Upper Village Drive. That includes 9 parallel parking spaces and several perpendicular spaces along that road. The exact numbers in the staff report. And then there are also several private roads where you can access the 2/2 condos. Here is the lower leg of this site plan. There's about 16 units here. And what won't be constructed, but this area in front of it will be a public road and will be constructed with Phase 1B. Like to add a little green to the plan, makes it pop and a little bit easier to see. So you can, here's the green area that surrounds several buildings of the 2/2s. You'll see that there is a little courtyard here for these 2 buildings and some green space in front of this other building, so it makes it a nice little courtyard area. For the ones that front along Manassas Drive, they are separating them from the public sidewalk with some landscaping in the middle, and then they'll have their own private walkway that connects the buildings. I requested that just so you have that visual breakage between public and private, which I think is important, especially when it's along a roadway, major roadway. I would note that both buildings are subject to noise attenuation as part of the proffers, and so they will have to install windows and doors that meet the decibel level of 45 decibels for the interior. And then how they're going to do it is dependent on the unit, and we don't have that right now, so a little more work will go into the exact noise mitigation components, windows and doors, based on the model. So we'll have to work through that during the building plan stage.
On the types of rooms that'll be
Correct,
closest
yeah,
to the...
which one's right. Also, as part of the proffers, each unit, we're getting a cash proffer of $2,000, and that will be, can be provided no later than the certificate of occupancy. And as Chelsea mentioned, these are subject to the design guidelines. You did show that facade rendering for the 2/2s. And I believe some of these are highly visible units. I know this one is. So you can have a nice facade on the side when you're driving down the road. And that is a component of the design guidelines. And we'll be monitoring that and ensuring that gets approved and is fulfilled during the building planning stage. And here's a little more green space on the lower leg, but most of it is concentrated at the top. And there is a subdivision plan associated with the site plan, and it is trying to make this one parcel. And the final legs down here, just for ease for everybody, I put them together. So here is parcel B, and then there are the 2 residual parcels for, which will eventually be Phase 1B, the commercial on the north side of Park Center Court. And I guess that this won't be officially subdivided until June. So is this not accurate?
Well, we're going to create
A new one?
Instead of a cafe parcel and the parking lot.
At the same time? Okay,
So we won't have those 2 residual parcels there.
okay.
From City Hall, so, yeah.
All right, well then, that was submitted with this, so.
Yeah.
Okay. So this parcel B is correct, it's just not the 2.
Yeah, so the larger one,
Mhm.
that will become a single parcel.
Okay.
The smaller ones will actually be 2 parcels, but one will be owned by the city, and the second parcel will be the outline of the building.
Okay,
So we're going to do
It'll be
basically is
island.
consolidate all the 2 City Halls
Yeah.
parcels, and the 2 parcels owned by them, consolidate it all together and then re-subdivide it to create 3 new parcels. That was the primary one for them that would be conveyed, all portions owned by the city would be conveyed as part of it. And then we're also going to create down in there the Cinema Cafe parcel. And then the residual then will be the public parking, still owned by the city.
right, okay. So, and this will all be recorded at the same time in the summer?
One
Okay,
deed, one
Ru-
plat.
got it,
for
okay,
everything.
okay. So I guess this is a preliminary plat then. Okay, so this takes us back to the site plan for this last residential phase of the development. Staff is recommending approval of the site plan and asking the planning commission to recommend approval of this plan for the zoning administration's consideration and approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Thank you. Questions from commissioners?
One question, could you just talk about the sufficiency of parking? Parking in like townhome developments around town are significantly sort of crowded. I'm just a little bit more clarity on how parking is
Well,
managed.
so, now this was developed and parked as one property. So there are actually I believe 248 spaces being provided on this site plan, which actually accommodates all of the parking required for their particular units. But there is additional parking and that's at a 1.75 parking rate. And then all the garages are counted as half a space. So technically, there's actually more, physically, there's more parking there than what we're counting. So, so there should be sufficient parking on this particular plan for all those individual units. But it is going to be parked as a whole community. And so, there will be other parking. I think that's going to be a management or a property management issue if there are parking concerns in the residential. But I think we're going to just, based on what is provided in the overall plan and the rezoning, they do meet the parking requirements. Lastly, do you anticipate that the residential association might provide stickers or some sort to ensure at least?
I think only if they start seeing a lot of commercial parking infringement on there, then it probably would make sense for them to implement some kind of sticker system. But I think we're still a little bit of time until
Away
that.
from that, okay.
And then for the commercial properties, of course, the VRE garage will be available in the evenings to also accommodate any parking requirements that typically happen at nights and on weekends.
That was my question.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Other questions from commissioners? Okay, thank you. And just again, for the possible motion, include the language about the associated subdivision plat, or leave that?
Let's leave that
Leave that
out
out,
since-
good.
Yes.
Okay,
just
after
focus
we
on
go.
the site plan
Good.
piece.
Are you gonna bring the subdivision plat back then, every time?
Yeah, well, we can bring it back with the phase 1B site plan.
Because we could just
Well,
say
we could-
associated subdivision plat, and it could
Yeah.
be what you finally decide on, or
Yeah.
is it, or would you rather?
We're willing to do that. I mean, so we haven't, in the past, we haven't really brought the subdivisions to this planning commission.
Okay.
But Nikki wants to start bringing them to you, so
Sure.
you understand what's going on.
Yep, understood.
So if you want to approve or advise her to approve any subdivision plat.
The
that's consistent
final
with
subdivision
the-
plat, or whatever
Yeah.
language, I mean,
Any subdivision easement plat required for the site plan.
Okay.
That would be helpful.
good, thank you. Appreciate it. No other questions from commissioners, then I'll close the public meeting. The time is 7:23. Is there any discussion, or I can make a motion and we can take it from there? So, based upon the public meeting and where we are, I will offer, I'm going to make a motion to recommend commit for consideration and approval to the zoning administrator, site plan SP number 20-10D, with an associated easement plat, subdivision plat, associated easement subdivision plat, to the zoning administrator for consideration and final approval. And I would care to make a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item for us to move on to is discussion only of the ARPA CIP projects. I'd like to turn it over to our city manager there.
Good evening, Mr.
Good evening.
For the Planning Commission, so I'm going to go over a couple of things tonight. I'm not going to go over the entire slide deck. It was part of your packet.
Yes.
But the reason why I'm doing this is officially part of our CIP. This is a separate funding source, but I felt it was more transparent to still brief you all on what we're doing from a capital perspective, utilizing ARPA funds, because they do eventually in the budget get incorporated with the CIP as well, even though they're not technically city dollars. But I wanted to highlight these projects for you all, and feel free to, of course, to provide your recommendations to the governing body in terms of the CIP and what ARPA projects we have for the CIP as well, because the more community engagement we have on this, the better. But what I'll do tonight is I'll go over the summary slide, and I'm actually going to bring up the spreadsheet and just kind of walk you down the timeline a little bit so you can kind of see how everything flows. And I did hand out to you all, that was not part of your packet, but it was part of the presentation that I made to the governing body a few months ago. There's a back and front. But this first page that says 3-year, this just shows you kind of the revenue that we're getting from the federal government. So it's a total of about $21.5 million, which we've already received half of that, and we're going to receive the other half this May and June.
Cool.
So we get, a piece from the federal government directly, which is roughly $3 million, and the rest we get from the state, who's a pass-through entity for the federal government. It gives it to the state to then to give to us. And the page behind it just kind of gives the the major categories that the federal government wanted us to spend this money on. Each of these have then subcategories as well, so we've evaluated those thoroughly. But you can see that number one is responding to the public health emergency itself, and then any negative economic impacts that arose from it. So that was clearly kind of the priority goal. Number two is they wanted to give pay raises for workers who were performing essential work, which most of our city employees did with that. We never, stopped working during the pandemic. We were here continuing to service residents, and we'll continue to do so. And then number three was to calculate any reduction in revenues that came from COVID-19. So we get to kind of calculate those losses and then recognize those revenues. We're actually using that just as an audit cushion, because we know we're going to get audited from what we're spending on this in a few years, just like we've already been audited for the CARES Act that we got.
Yeah.
And so when they question any expenditures,
You
we
got
want to
the-
use this revenue loss as a cushion. Okay, you disagree with this, we're taking that as revenue loss, so
Gotcha.
don't take that money back from us. And then number four, they specifically highlighted some major capital infrastructure, which was water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. And for us, it's really water and sewer. That's a big priority of what we do from a city perspective. And within water, stormwater was counted as that as well. So you'll see with the CIP tonight, out of the $21.5 million in ARPA revenue, we proposed to the governing body to spend $12 million of that, so roughly half of it, 55%, in the CIP portion of ARPA, and then the rest in the operating budget portion of ARPA. A big part of the ARPA operating was the development of the community services division to help deal with the pandemic and effects, as stated by priority number one, which is public health, mental health, economic development, and housing as well, which were kind of the key priorities of the ARPA legislation passed by Congress. From a CIP standpoint, you can see again water and sewer and stormwater, which is part of that water classification that ARPA had, takes up half of the whole CIP. These are very expensive projects, and the biggest piece is going to be stormwater. That wasn't part of the initial budget that the governing body adopted. I think we had about initially just about $1 million for stormwater, and then with some concerns with some culvert failures later, we said, okay, we need to do a little bit more with stormwater, so we shifted from other items to stormwater. You can see that's the single largest item that we have within the ARPA CIP. That's on the bottom there, and then going up, water and sewers, the other piece as well. The general services, that's kind of a combination of many things, so even though it's the biggest item, that can really be split up into two. So facility enhancements and then IT technology, right? So with CARES Act, we did that for technology enhancement. We'll continue to do that with ARPA to kind of modernize our organization, and the biggest piece of that is going to be the enterprise resource platform, or Keystone platform that we implemented back in 2015. We're looking to modernize that system to a new system that will better serve our residents and our city staff. And then the other big category is our fire and rescue department. That's the easiest to justify in the ARPA legislation.
Sure.
Medical equipment, all that. That's all part of our response effort as our fire and rescue team continue to service those individuals who need to be hospitalized due to COVID-19. So that's kind of the summary, the high-level view of the ARPA CIP. And now I'm actually going to open up the spreadsheet view, so I can scroll down and just kind of give you a better feel for kind of project. You have the entire project by project list, but I want to give you a feel for how that aligns from a timeline perspective. So you can see, let me zoom in here just to make this a little bit easier for you all to see here. You can see the first categories, of course, are fire and EMS. We included the ladder truck, which we purchased this year, so that was very exciting for us. And you can see all the different devices, the medical devices that we have, the technology elements that we have to service our fire department, and kind of how they're spread out across the years. We're trying to do most of our spending in FY '23 and '24. That's the original plan. We had some things that caused us to move it up to '22 as well, to really start tackling, unfortunately, the culverts and other, the ladder truck, which came up a great opportunity to buy a ladder truck, because we originally had budgeted about $1.5 million. We were able to get one for just under $400,000. That was in great shape. So we ended up saving the city money on that project. So these are kind of the different fire department elements, and you can see it totals roughly about $1.1 million, but all the spending happens between FY '22 and FY '24. We don't hold back anything until FY '25. The next category is a small one. It's Parks and Rec, and actually this category needs to be updated. The title, it was updated on the slide, but we have the playground upgrade for Signal Hill Park. So the legislation did talk about park enhancements, because as we know, during the pandemic, one thing that was always open to people was to go out and enjoy open air, and the playground was one of those as well. We never shut down our playground. We kept it open to our kids to enjoy the outdoor setting. So we want to get, if you've been to Signal Hill Park, it's a very old and out-of-date playground that needs to be upgraded so that our young residents can enjoy their time at Signal Hill Park. That was proposed for FY '23. And then the next one actually should be renamed to Outdoor Movie Screen. So we're partnering with Cinema Cafe to actually have instead of having a smaller screen on the plaza itself in front of City Hall, we're actually now going to have a much larger screen that's attached to the building, probably a 20 by 40 foot screen attached to the building that we would have control over, but we would partner with Cinema Cafe because they have the rights to show new releases there as well. So we can shut down Park Central Plaza and do nice outdoor events for our community to show them, like for example in Vienna, there's a place called Mosaic. They have the large screen as well. During Halloween, they showed what was the Addams Family Part 2 for the kids in that area. So things like that we can do. We can show sporting events and other things as well, just to kind of create community feel as well, and to provide another avenue for theaters during difficult times, economic times due to the pandemic, to help enhance their business as well. And that's another big element of the funding, was not just directly dealing with the pandemic itself, but also helping those tourism industries that were hit hard, namely movie theaters, which was one of the biggest hit, hotels as well. We don't have any hotels here, but because we're partnering with the movie theater, we have the right to use this funding to help them out, even with their expansion plans. That was the goal, was to try to get our economy back to pre-COVID times. And businesses have expansion plans, just like Cinema Cafe did, because we spoke with them before the pandemic, and they wanted to come to our city. Pandemic hit them hard, just like it hit many theaters. So the goal of Congress was, again, to help businesses get back to pre-COVID levels with their expansion plans. So that's why we're pursuing that project. And the next one is a kind of a very large category called general services, which includes technology and facility enhancements. And you can see all the different technological components, the ERP being the biggest one. Chris and his team right now are working on the RFP to go out here soon to solicit bids for a new ERP platform. And that'll be kind of twofold. We'll also send out an RFP for implementation support as well. So we'll select the software with the current consultant we have who's advising us, bring that back to governing body for approval, and then we'll also bring back a contract for implementation support so we implement this system properly. So those are the two different pots there, and we currently have the consulting that's happening right now. And then just some digital platforms to continue to help us as we virtualize our operations, cybersecurity support as well, laptops, continuing to move from desktops to laptops to enable remote work or mobile work when needed, some additional support for law enforcement, and then public meeting broadcast equipment, so that when we move to the new city hall, all this equipment back here is way out of date. So we want to modernize that and go back to being able to stream this again on Comcast TV as well, and not just on the internet as well. And then public Wi-Fi, as part of a budget amendment that we have to do, where we moved it up to FY '22, because that's when they're ready for us across the street to actually install the Plaza Wi-Fi system for our residents who are enjoying the outdoors on the plaza to still be able to bring their computers and to work out there as well and connect to our Wi-Fi. This is a pretty ambitious project here. This kind of twofold, because again, the funding allows us to support our water and sewer infrastructure and stormwater team, or infrastructure. It also allows us to support kind of the team that does that, which is our public works. And if you've all been to the public works building, it's the oldest public facility. We were able to deal with City Hall, which is the second oldest, through this development. We want to help out public works by getting them a new building, but we can actually tackle two issues at the same time. The schools need additional facilities for their facilities and transportation team. We're looking to combine them into one industrial building utilizing these funds, and then help the schools retrofit their facilities for more vocational training for our high school students, right? So to kind of get back to that at the high school level as well. So this is a partnership project between the city and the schools that we're both very excited about. So it's going to have to be a combination of ARPA and some of the proffer money from the development that we were speaking about earlier tonight to make this happen. And then some additional facility support, all again to the fire and rescue department, the fire station. Again, that's technically a medical facility, so it's easier for us to justify facility enhancements for that building as well. So that significantly helps out with our fire department. And then again, we talked about infrastructure. We wanted to do SCADA as well, but it's a tight budget. $21 million sounds like a lot of money. It is. But as you start throwing these large projects on, you realize you run out of money quickly here. And we initially had SCADA. We had to cut that back because of culverts. But we still want to implement the smart meters project. And what that is kind of real-time data. So these are actual new modern meters that we'll put across the city. So it's providing real-time data back to our team and to residents eventually too, that they can actually go on a site and see when they get alerts if there's a spike in their water usage, right? So they can deal with the leak before having to wait for their bill and see that they get a big one. So it's constant real-time data coming back to us about our water usage more, and ensure that we have the most up-to-date technology for water billing as well, and kind of lessen the headache that we currently deal with our antiquated meters that continue to fail as well. So our public works constantly has to be replacing our existing meters which are out of date. And then from a stormwater standpoint, we want to use some of this as well as needed for design engineering for a stream restoration project. It may not necessarily be Russia Branch anymore. We're still evaluating that with an environmental company right now who's reviewing this for us on what their recommendations are for what stream restoration projects and pond projects will help us get to our pollutant reduction goals. But we want to set aside some money in case we need some engineering support. Why engineering support? Because eventually if we need to spend a lot of money on this, we're building up our stormwater fund for that, but in reality, we want to actually request an earmark from the federal government or a grant from the federal government to fund that project. And to do that, though, you need a lot of information when you're applying for these grants. And the more engineering that's done, the more likely it is that you'll actually be successful in winning a grant. And then that will help reduce the burden on our residents who are paying the stormwater fee right now in an effort to build up a sufficient account to cover some of these bigger projects. If we can get some outside sources of funding, then we don't have to be as aggressive with those rates and could potentially even reduce them if they able to. And then culvert repairs. This was everyone remembers the culvert that collapsed in Mosby Ridge a few years ago. We don't want to allow that to happen again. So last summer we had another scare on Manassas Drive near the railroad tracks. Luckily Calvin and his team addressed it quickly with no issues. But we looked at all those kind of strategic culverts, and even though we think there may be some time, we really don't want to risk it. We don't want to risk more potential collapses either. So we want to take advantage of this one-time money that we're getting to enhance the safety and well-being of our residents and allow for successful stormwater flow through those culverts and provide safety for our residents on those major areas. So this is going to cover three culverts. So the one that we addressed here on Manassas Drive and the railroad track, and then two on Railroad Drive, right? Those are concerns because if those go down, then you don't have any access to the Erie Signature from that side and that side. So that's another concern as well. And we never, of course, want these to collapse when people are actually driving over them. These are our bridges, right? We don't have bridges in our city, but you can think of these essentially as our bridges. So that's kind of the ARPA CIP in a nutshell, so you kind of get a feel for the timeline for a lot of these activities. And again, in your packet, we did have this similar style slide deck with every project broken down in detail. But I wasn't going to have you go through that again with each department, reading you all on that. I figured just get it on the packet, and if you have any questions, you can
Okay.
Ask them, you can email us at any time, and we can get back to you.
Great. Any questions this evening?
None here.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Great. Our next item is discussion only for updating, modifying the comprehensive plans, goals and objectives for police, fire and rescue, and education. The departments had been working on coming up with their goals and objectives, and I'll turn it over to Administrator Barry.
I think you gotta zoom in.
Okay. Well, everybody has it in their packet. Everybody's watching on TV. Hopefully they can read this. But the Planning Commission requested that I meet with 3 different departments, the police, the fire and rescue, and education. So I did that over the course of the month and came up with some goals and objectives for each of those departments. These are community facilities. It's anticipated that as part of our comprehensive plan, we're gonna do 1 chapter for all of these items in 4 facilities instead of having them as separate chapters as they are now. The elements that I really focused on was high-quality departments, which of course includes facilities, but equipment. And one issue that, of course, the city does have, unfortunately, is retaining staff. So those were kind of the emphasis, as well as the forward goals of what we would like to see the departments do. I don't really necessarily want to go over these individually, but I just wanted to share some themes and answer any questions. We do have Chief Lugo and thank you, James Sofer, our fire and rescue chief. And unfortunately, the school's Eric Neff could not be here. He's recruiting teachers. So if you have questions for him, I'm certainly happy to follow up with him on those. Of course, one of the other aspects of the police department is public safety and safety in the community. So there are several goals and objectives of the police going out in the community, working with community and involving themselves in safety programs, as well as education and encouraging and educating youth about public safety and policing. And making sure all the police are educated, well-versed in quality policing and making sure they're exemplary citizens, if you will, for all of the residents in Manassas.
Just on page 3 there, under Objective G, it looks like in the second line, there's an extra "the"
Okay.
there. Just wanted to
Thank you.
offer that. You're welcome. So it looks like the first "the" can be taken out of where the service call is there. It's only 3 words, but 3 letters, but still, I guess, right? That's okay. Sure. We have opportunity to ask questions if, is that okay?
Oh, sure, yeah, if you want to ask any questions. And again, I mean, there is a repetitive theme for all the departments about facilities and personnel as well as promoting public safety in all areas,
Yeah.
especially with schools, and of course, having medical staff and being informative in the community. I thought one goal and objective was there is a term where they're calling it where you engage with residents who are actually, you look at your data to see who is having a lot of calls of service. And so you would follow up with that individual to see if there's anything that the fire and rescue could do. Maybe it's because it's missing medication or whatever. So we could follow up and have that community contact without reducing the calls of service. It's still providing a community need. So that I think that was a really good component of doing a little extra service, but also reducing those emergency service calls for somebody who
Redirecting them
Yeah,
somewhere,
right.
sure. Yeah.
And if it is a repetitive
Yeah.
911 call, certainly there's probably more issues going
Right.
on there. So
Yeah.
I thought that was a great goal and objective.
Good. Mr. Collier, did you have a?
If I could, under the police department, objective H, to retain staff, you have competitive pay and benefits. Do you offer any kind of a bonus incentive program? Is there anything,
Talking about for the hiring of new officers, or?
just as
Yeah.
in performing their work, are there different levels of things that, I know we recognize folks when they do something really exceptional, but just a bonus incentive for their day-to-day.
Yeah. Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about, I guess, the pay. So we do offer kind of across the board bonuses. At least we've done that. We've asked the governing body to do that over the last few years, and so we have been doing bonuses at least 3 times over the last few years here.
So is that
Some of it it's across the board for all,
staff?
but specifically with the police and I would say the fire department, the long-term goal for retention is really moving to a step and grade system. That's what most other organizations utilize. We don't, and we're still not ready to because of the financial difficulties, where we've come from as a city financially. But the goal is as we get stronger financially, we would want to move to a step and grade system so that a new police officer, new firefighter, they can come in and they can kind of see as they stay with the city how they grow within the department each year, and with grades and qualifications and everything else, where they're going to grow in terms of pay over the long run. Right now, we need the flexibility because we're still not really out of the the financial situation we're still in, and we still need to get stronger. We're sustainable now as an organization. We're building good strong reserve positions and credit, but until we have a better commercial base, the long-term financial position is still tenuous, and so we want to be certain that those things are going to work out before we come back to that. I know that I believe the schools are going to be moving towards step and grade for their employees this year. That's part of the superintendent's budget. So that's very exciting. If we can support them in doing that, and then the next step again would be doing the same thing for police and fire when our city is able to do so.
And one other question, under the fire section, objective G and H for a second firehouse and a training facility, where do you anticipate that would be within the city limits?
Yeah, so training facility, I think the most logical candidate is going to be if we can move the community development department out, or the public works, to a new building, there may be some available space there, and we'd probably want to pursue some kind of grant to do the enhancements of those facilities. For the fire station, that's I think a sensitive subject whenever we have that conversation, because I think the city rushed the decision for where to put where it's placed now and how big it is as well to accommodate long-term growth, because you really needed almost 2 stations on each side of the track, right? Because there's risks there on both sides of the tracks in terms of response times. But again, our ability to tackle this issue is really going to be dependent on successful growth, economic growth as well in the future. But ideally, it'd be nice to get one on the other side of the tracks east, for quick response, right? We don't want anyone to have to wait extra time because of the railroad
The train's
crossing,
only
correct?
one you do. You drive all the way around.
Correct. There's a transportation solution that you saw last time that we briefed, that we are evaluating as well, but that's a very expensive proposition that I'm not sure how feasible it is that we're actually going to get federal money to do that transportation solution. So it's something we're evaluating, but it's going to require some pretty strong, robust economic growth for us to be able to finance something like that. But it would have been nice to have one maybe east of 28 and then, west of 28 and then east of the tracks, and we would have been able to cover our city in terms of response times a lot better, but we're making do with kind of what we have right now. But I know that's a long-term strategic desire for us in terms of response times for our residents, especially east of the tracks.
But having your own training facility, that's good.
Yeah, I think the goal too, Chief Sober, if we have training facility, is to be able to recruit younger candidates, train them up as well. I know this.
Plus, we go to partnership with the schools. If they're going to bring back the VOTEC program, maybe we partner with them and lots of land behind the school area, and then get the grant, like you said.
Yeah.
go that route.
To keep some of our high schoolers, help them transition to the fire department.
Great.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
I would just like to mention, Leslie touched on the, having the schools join with Public Works, that is mentioned in one of the goals and objectives. So we're trying to incorporate things that we're working on now, but also looking towards the future as well. So. And similar to what Chief Soper says, I think it's important in the comprehensive plan to kind of identify facilities and institutions that could provide, I like the term lifelong learning, because it's not only for the youth, but also for our adult residents who may want to switch careers or have an opportunity to learn a new, vocation, but some type of different work or IT. Also, of course, taking English classes and citizenship classes is also a good benefit, and we can use a lot of our community institutions to further that knowledge, along with the community center to help for additional preschool, not only programs, but also preschool initiatives as well. So.
Thank you. That's good. Thank you very much. Does that, for the chapters in the plan, does that pretty well get us to the goals and objectives? I hadn't looked, but.
That's a good question. I don't have that, I think.
I guess for the next time, if there's something, we probably have a couple left, but I'm just not sure which.
Yeah, I'll have to get back to you. I
Yes.
think there might be another chapter, but yeah, I think we're almost finished.
Whatever the next one is, if you want to take the steps to
Work that in.
either circle back with the department or
Right.
whatever needs to be done there, so that the next discussion or another discussion item we can have to make sure we go through all the chapters there. Good. Great. Cool. Thank you. That's great. So we have no unfinished business and no report of special committees, and the informational update from community development staff.
Sure, I'd just like to mention that we are having a household hazardous waste and shredding event on April 16th. That hasn't been formally announced yet, but that will be occurring actually off Owens Court, and it'll be from 8 to noon. And I believe in April, we will be having a public hearing for the capital improvement program. Is that still on schedule for the planning commission? So next month, we'll be making a recommendation
Okay.
on the CIP. And we also are moving forward with the VRE parking garage, and as well as the phase 4 of the downtown development, which are two apartment buildings along with a commercial building, so that should be coming to you probably in the summer. So we're busy, and I'm sure you're seeing the construction, and of course Chelsea mentioned that is moving forward, and so you should be seeing some residential being put up in the next couple of weeks as we start doing framing, so. Are there any particular questions you have?
Just, what was the date again of the shred event?
April 16th.
16?
Yeah, it should be the Saturday.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned. The time is 7:54.